Go ahead and get started. I haven't met all of you. All of you have not met me. My name is Cheryl Wells. Turn off your emergency devices, please. Even if you are the assistant chief. So what's going to go on here is I'm going to ask each of the candidates to introduce themselves and tell you whatever they wish about themselves and why they're running for the position. I have some questions that were submitted. I'm going to go ahead and ask those first so you guys can get an idea of what's appropriate, because some questions wouldn't be. I kept teasing. I said, this is not an appropriate question. An example of an inappropriate question. What color is your underwear? That is not appropriate. So that's just an example. I don't expect any of you would have asked that. I know plenty who might answer it, but at any rate, we're going to just go ahead and get started here. We're just going to go in a row. So Mike?
Good evening. My name is Michael Gonzalez, and I'm running for board position number 2. And I just want to thank each and every one of you for coming this evening. Hopefully there will be some information that we can share that you would learn more about us in making your decision as to who to elect this next Tuesday. I feel blessed to be part of the community and to be a resident here in Timberon. There's a lot of wonderful neighbors that I know, good friends here. There's many of you here that I don't know. I'm sorry for that. I hope to get to know more of you, irregardless of what the outcome of this election is. And it's my desire that we can all learn something more about the water district that many of you may not have known about before you came today. And the discussions today may be things, hopefully of truth, things that can be validated with facts and evidence. So I would like to try to speak from a position of factual basis and try not to speak of opinions and do my best to speak about the systems that we're speaking of here in the areas of opportunity that are needed there. And I'll do my best not to try to speak about individuals. The system is thus far improved, but we have some serious challenges with water loss percentages, 80%. Each month we lose approximately 102 rail cars full of water each month and every month at an 80% water loss rate. And not only is that unacceptable, but at some point the well would have to be reworked because the water table will fall. And the 2014, 2013 time frame of repair on that well, they lowered the perforated area in which the system drew from, the well drew from. So there is some concern that I have that the well, if we continue to push it and run it as hard as we're doing now, it runs 80% of the time sometimes to keep up, that if we don't get these leaks addressed, that at some point in the future, we may not have enough water. So I think from my standpoint, the largest thing that I would be interested in getting grants for are for the water distribution system piping to be replaced. So far, I don't know of any of them that's been approved. It is quite expensive. We have some serious challenges here in Timberon. We have 180 some odd miles of piping, and all of it is depreciated and leaking in various different places. I can elaborate more. I have a plan of action on each of these subjects with water, with financial, and regulatory compliance, auditing, and so forth. But I don't want to cannibalize the time from the other two candidates, so hopefully I can share a little bit later about my plans on each of these items. But I would say in closing that to get a grant of large magnitude, I've heard numbers thrown around 15 the $32 million for a complete distribution system replacement, valves, connectors. The community would more than likely have to pay 10% up front or 10% loan component. So we would have to start putting money aside in a reserve account to where we can front that money in order to get that grant. There's some other strategies that we can use. We can break it into smaller zones, depending on where the areas that we have the greatest amount of leaks. So the water leakage problem is a serious problem, and the state calls it a problem when it reaches 10% of the water that you pump, you lose. So that's the take action point. We're well beyond that, and so there needs to be a sense of urgency to get that accomplished. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon, my name is B. Hummel, and I'm running for position 1. In attending the board meetings, I found that we could not get all the answers we had been asking. In doing our own research, we came up with a lot of errors. My main concern is the people of this community that are on a fixed income, and then we keep elevating the rate of the water usage, the fees. There's people that don't have extra money to come up, but we all need the water. So there's quite a few things that if elected, I will look into. The other problem area that I see is that I did not get answers to the inventory control. We either don't have money to buy inventory, or they just did not want to answer the questions. There's always some evasive answer, and we have not been able to get answers. So if elected, if I work with the board, I would like to be more involved with the community, see what their concerns are, and work to keep a low rate and not an increase to resolve all the problems that we have with the water system. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Brent Henderson. So this was supposed to be an introduction, and so I want to take a minute to explain who I am, because I've only been in Timberon 2.5 years, and I work in Carlsbad during the week, so a lot of you I have not met, so I want to give you an idea of who I am, right? So I moved to Timberon, bought Mr. Putney's place on Trout 2.5 years ago, and my wife and I come up here on the weekends or when we take vacation. What really caught my attention was some statements that were made on social media that really painted a bad picture of TWSD, and it alleged some unhealthy water on a certain line that just happened to be the one my house is tapped off of. So it got my attention. And at that time I felt like I should try to be involved and try to help however I can. Because clearly there is a lot of mistrust right now among, at least it's what seems like, quite a few people in the community and the department or the district. So I have a background in water systems, starting from the Navy when I was making fresh water out of seawater for a submarine and doing the water treatment and water chemistry and all of that. And then 20 years at Pantex plant, which is the nuclear weapons plant in Amarillo. I was a utilities department manager, and we had a water system like a city. We pumped our own water, treated it, had the distribution system, some of which was old and as old as World War II. Some of the fire hydrants were stamped in 1942. And then they reopened the plant in the early 50s, and it operates up to today. So the system was comprised of every type of pipe ever made, of every age they ever made it. And so we encountered a lot of difficulties. We had a lot of leaks, a lot of failures, and over time, you know, investing in the infrastructure and replacing it with good equipment, good piping, but also taking good care of what we had. You know, we were able to get it a lot more reliable. It was also managed maintenance, and then I went to California for a few years, did the same kind of work, and now I'm at the WIP site in Carlsbad, where we put nuclear waste underground, and I came down to help get that restarted. As you know, there was a fire and a rag release, and it was a big deal. Right now I'm in contractor assurance, which part of our job is to help provide the transparency that all of the stakeholders need to be sure that we're in compliance, that we're not headed toward an out of compliance situation like they had in the past. And we have a new NMED, New Mexico environmental permit, that's really strict and voluminous, and it's hard to work with. So we've been improving our compliance with that. But I've learned a lot of ways that you can provide information to people that help them see some of those key characteristics or key parameters of what's going on, so that you can kind of immediately know where your problems are and where they're not. And I think here we need more of those kinds of tools. We need more transparency, and it's good for both management, the district, and the people being served. You know, it helps both, right? So anyway, that's why I threw my hat in the ring. If there's something I can do here to help this community, this place that I'm going to live full time one of these days, and we all need the water system to function now and well into the future reliably. And Michael pointed out, you know, the number of leaks that we have. Not only is that wasteful, but every leak is an opportunity for infiltration. You know, so we got to continue aggressively on the leak reductions. And from what I see, you know, there's a path forward on that in the plan. But as a board, you know, we have to stay on top of that and make sure it stays a priority. So that's pretty much why I'm here. So thank you.
Thank you, candidates, for stating your purposes. Now we're going to go into the question portion of this assembly. I had some questions submitted to me. Now, as I told the candidates, just an hour ago, I came up with, well, maybe an hour and a half. You know, most big city folks will have a press secretary who will give them some questions prior to having to answer them, because some of them are quite complicated. So therefore, those questions that were submitted to me have been given to the candidates at this time before I asked them. So it's really so I don't have to repeat the questions. I'm going to be honest here. And after that, then we will open the floor. Anyone wishing to ask a question, come to the microphone and you will be recognized, and you can ask your question of the candidates. And I'm going to stay out of that. So, on with the first question. And this is for all three. Would you agree? Now, these might be controversial. Now, remember, these are not my questions. Would you agree or disagree that there is a conflict of interest with Marilyn Hatfield holding a position on the board of directors? And we'll start again. Please explain you agree or disagree.
Currently, with what I know about this conflict of issue question with Ms. Hatfield, approximately 2 months ago, a gentleman from the Timberon resident here presented each board member a copy of the fundable.com presentation. It's a prospectus of sorts for a business proposition by Hatfield Development Corporation, in which it's probably about 50 pages. It's quite long. but essentially it's a real estate investment trust that has been in existence since 2014 timeframe. And according to the first phase, they were receiving money for it. I personally don't know how much money was received. I know that it's active on the website. It is still active today. If you go to fundable.com, you can find that web page, and you can see all the things that I'm speaking of. And so the reason I'm trying to give that information as some background is so that information was given to the board members, and I personally fully expected that there would be some sort of investigation into the matter to determine and to tell the people of Timberon what their findings were. Unfortunately, that didn't take place, and the last meeting that we had with the board, I asked the question again after discussion about the presentation of the documents that were given 2 months earlier, if Ms. Hatfield would like to comment on it, and she did. And essentially she said it's no longer in operation. It was a concept before its time, I think is what she may have said. And so her answer is that it's not. Bases the fact that it's intended to receive money. It's in the first phase of it, of a real estate investment trust. And part of my properties is part of a lake, and the other part is on a hillside, which would be a ski slope. I found it kind of funny that they were doing a real estate investment trust in phases where the 9,000 acres in Timberon were considered already under the umbrella of the Hatfield Development Company. If you read the document, you kind of get, it alludes to that. So based on that, sorry for the long description, but in my opinion, I do feel it's a conflict of interest. And I think it should have been dealt with by the board. And so to answer the question, yes, I do agree that it is a conflict of interest.
Thank you. Dee?
I do believe it is a conflict of interest. By reading the minutes of March, I believe, 2013, Mr. Hatfield wanted to come to and be a member of the board. And at that time, the board said that there will be a conflict of interest because of this holdings that they were trying to get or do. But then they turned around and elected Mrs. Hatfield, who is the president of this corporation. Mr. Hatfield is the vice president. Mrs. Hatfield is the president. The board found that by having her on the board, it will be a conflict of interest, but then they elected her. So yes, I have a big problem with her being on the board.
Thank you, Bea. And Brent?
Well, the bylaws say that board members are prohibited from personally and substantially participating, influencing, or voting as a board member in any particular matter or enterprise in which the board member or the board member's family, which includes spouse, child, or employee has a significant financial interest. And significant financial interest shall mean the current percentage of ownership exceeds 5%, or annual income from the entity exceeds $10,000, or the current equity value exceeds $10,000. So I think board members really need to be above reproach. And to me, this seems a little greasy. I did see the map some months ago, and I didn't make the connection with Maryland, but I live near the top of a hill, and my house is underwater, according to their plan, so I don't think they used a surveyor to help figure out where to put their lake, but it bothers me a little bit. I think the board, would do well to probably consider whether or not that meets this standard or not. But And I don't know how much deliberation there was before. I'm sure it's nothing new.